Hey everyone, welcome to Nerds on the Black. I'm Zach Gifford, your regular host, joined today by Birds on the Black and Chirps host Alex Crisafulli and John Fleming, formerly of Vivo Birdos and now at STL Bullpen. Thanks both of you for joining me on pretty short notice. John, we'll start with you. We were talking about some big news in your personal life that maybe you were excited. Hopefully, you're excited to share.
I just closed on a house about a little over 30 hours ago. I've spent most of that time moving stuff into a house, painting. Very tired, very happy to sit on a couch and talk about baseball rather than think about all the moving I still have to do.
Is that I think that's probably the biggest quarantine or COVID accomplishment of the group. Congrats on that. I have kept a dog alive now for 8 months or 10 months, which is that's a surprising accompliment. But
well, you probably are staying at home more often though. That probably helps with it.
Oh yeah, that's I've been at home since like March basically. It's been long. Chicago's pretty much totally shut down. So Alex, I heard you had your own battle.
Are you talking about COVID?
Yeah.
Okay. I got tested again today for the fourth time. For those who don't know what you're talking about, I assume that's everyone. Basically, everyone in my family has tested positive for COVID but me.
You need to share the secret, whatever it is. We're all looking for it.
I don't know what that secret is. In fact, I'm expecting that I will test positive tomorrow. Everyone's fine, by the way, in case anyone was wondering. So don't, send your thoughts and prayers somewhere else. But yeah, very, very mild symptoms for everyone. So we're all doing fine. But yeah,
glad to hear. So we'll get started on the baseball talk. It's been a while since I've had the show, about 2 months, but nothing has really happened. The Cardinals lost in the playoffs, rather disappointingly. MLB's, it seems like most teams are still trying to figure out what their budgets are going to be for next year. Cardinals are kind of in the same boat. We saw Colton Wong leave. The Rule 5 draft went today. They, I think, took one minor leaguer. They haven't made any other acquisitions. I think you can hear my dog whining in the background.
He's upset about the lack of action. I get it.
Yeah, he's upset too. He's he was excited to watch the ball get thrown around on TV. So he's looking for a better team. But the big news, I think, roster-wise that came out was the Cardinals offered Molina something yesterday that he called ridiculous and rejected. And I'm curious. I have my own thoughts. I'm curious to hear where you guys are at on the Yadi saga in Waino and whether they're coming back or not. So, John, we'll start with you, I guess. What do you make of the comments from, I think it was from Molina's agent, and what should we be preparing, I guess, for Molina to walk for 2021?
Well, I think it makes sense to prepare for him to walk just because, then worst case scenario, the thing we expected to happen happened. Best case, we're all very happy because Yadi or Molina's back. But, I do think that this is a situation where it makes just total sense for both parties to get something done just because, while the Cardinals, might have some sort of internal options at catcher that they feel okay with, it's not as though those internal options are a lot better than the current options of any team that's considering signing Yadi or Molina. And I think that, while I tend to be a relatively unsentimental person when it comes to keeping players around, there is some value to that. I think that with him and with Wainwright, there is some value to the idea of having them as lifelong Cardinals, just to sort of say that happened because, the way baseball's gone, it's probably there's not that many opportunities for it to happen. And they're also, still decently productive players. They're obviously not what they were in the past, but this isn't like, trotting out, -2 WAR Willie McGee in the late 90s. This is like guys who were still like...
Or Chris Davis in 2020.
Or Chris Davis in 2020, yeah.
Go ahead, Alex.
No, I was just gonna say I think the Cardinals and Yadi really deserve each other because they are the two most whiny entities in public. Have you I thought of this today when I saw, I think it was Mosaic's comments about Carlos Martinez. which I think are entirely fair, but on one level. But I hate, and this has been one of my biggest complaints about Mizalik for a while, is how often he seems to, I don't know if drag his players is the right word in public, but kind of say things that I think could be left behind closed doors. And Yadi yesterday, I think he called what the Cardinals offer ridiculous. Is that the term he used? Yeah. So they're both just like, meaning the Cardinals and Yadi, just like these two whiny things that need to be together. And like John said, it's clear that they're not going to put like an amazing roster on the field this season. I think we can all agree on that. So if that's the case, then at least give us Yadier Molina and Adam Wainwright, because those two guys mean something to us, and they are still productive, at least in some capacity.
Yeah, and so I was just pulling up. Wainwright's actually been, if you believe in Fangraph's version of WAR is like a good measure, which it has, obviously merits and whatever, and has its critics too. But he's been the Cardinals' second most productive starter since the beginning of last year. So he had a good 2020. He had a good 2019. I'm looking further back now, but he, I kind of thought he was done like 5 years ago, and it sure looked like he was done for a few of those years. But like now, you look at the roster, like you don't have 5 clear-cut starters, I don't think. You're going to be dealing with somebody like Gomber or Ponce Leon or Oviedo or Reyes. They're talking about, possibly a spot. And you're coming off a year where nobody threw that many innings. So I saw it thrown around that, you might end up with 7 or 8. I think it was the Ben Humphrey, old Viva Alberto's managing editor. He was saying you might end up with 7 or 8 guys that have to throw 80 to 100 innings. And Wainwright, he's been an average, league average pitcher the last couple of years, and that's going to be worth something when you just need innings. Archer, can you be quiet? Sorry about that. Yeah. Then I think with Molina, I don't think the drop off from Kisner is too much. But there's something to be said for continuity with the pitching staff. And just like his ability to manage what they have and kind of get the young guys through tougher situations. But Matty Ice asking, if the Cardinals sign Yadi for 2 years, do we jump all aboard the trade Kisner train?
John, go ahead.
Yeah.
This is sort of hedging my bets on this, but it depends what you can get for Andrew Kisner. At this point, it's not like he's established himself as being a major league catcher. He's still, somewhat young, but it's not like he's a 20-year-old kid at this point. I truly, at this point, don't know what you could get for Andrew Kisner. If you're able to, get some sort of like actual legitimate prospect for him, or somebody who's going to be useful at the major league level, then yeah, sure, I think that it's worth looking into, because you might be looking at somebody else as being your catcher of the future at that point. But if you're just going to be trading him for, a washed up minor league player, then what's the point? Then Andrew Kisner's value just as a backup catcher would be more than that.
Yeah, I said John, go ahead, because I have no idea. When it comes to like
Thanks.
when it comes to prospects, I'm good at like knowing who the next guy might be, but never like the next guy. So I don't even know who we would have lined up, I guess, if we were to trade Kisner. Maybe it wouldn't matter if we're still banking on a couple more years out of Yadier Molina, and that would give them time to figure that situation out. But
I'm kind of in the same boat. I think Kyle's talked about, I want to say it might be Herrera. There's somebody else that's a couple years behind Kisner that, Kyle's talked about potentially being kind of the next in that line from guys that get passed over by Yadi. So Kelly, Kisner, and then him. But yeah, you do need a quality backup. Kisner hasn't really proven. It's only been like 2 cups of coffee in the majors, but he hasn't done a whole lot with those opportunities yet. And so I wonder how much, like John said, I don't know that you're getting a lot from him. He's like 3 or 4 couple years removed from like his good minor league seasons. And he hasn't when he's been in the majors, it's been limited opportunities, but I would assume that, he has better trade value if he kind of hits the ground running in those opportunities. I don't know.
I'm curious. Sorry to interrupt, but how many plate appearances? Let's say Yadi is back next year and he's the starting catcher. In a perfect world, how many plate appearances would you like to see Kisner get at this point?
I mean, it's
and that's stipulating that Yadi's like, yeah, cool, whatever. I will sit down however many times you want me to sit down.
It's a pretty big. That's
a pretty big hypothetical. I think you need 200 probably to see what you get out of Kisner. So, and even because then you're playing like every third game, maybe like you can get into some kind of rhythm. Kyle, who will be on after us, said Herrera is the one everyone talks about. Julio Rodriguez is potentially more of a stable backup. Thanks, Kyle. Of course, I barely heard of Herrera, never heard of Julio Rodriguez, but Kyle, of course, has that in his back pocket. Kyle will be on after us with Pat, so you can ask all the prospect questions there. But yeah, I think you got to get Kisner a rhythm, and then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But yeah, we threw out Wieters, the last couple of years, and he's nothing but replacement level anymore. So you're not really losing anything by trying Kisner.
And Wieters is kind of an interesting example of sort of we're thinking of Kisner as being this prospect that we thought of as being like the next big thing, and like that was Matt Wieters 10 years ago. And granted, Wieters actually did have a few years of productive value, but guys don't necessarily last as long as Yadi or Molina has at a premium level. Like even if Molina's not like a premium player, he's still like a major league caliber catcher and has been for 16 years running. And that's not true of everybody. And you kind of have to, be mindful of that with any prospect that comes up.
I kind of wonder if JT Realmuto's market is going to be kind of tough for him because of all the innings that he's caught. So you think, at least for me, it's similar to like Buster Posey, where Buster Posey's still good, but you're not getting, the same Buster Posey you're getting 5 years ago. At a certain point, for most guys, it seems like just catching those innings, getting up and down thousands and thousands of times takes the toll. Molina's kind of somehow been able to weather that. But it'll be interesting because you've seen like the Mets specifically come to mind where they're talking to McCann, who's had a couple breakout seasons recently, but he's a little older, but has, hundreds and hundreds of less innings behind the plate. And if you think that the difference next year is, one win, but that Realmuto carries a risk of kind of falling off the catcher cliff, so to say, I wonder how teams are going to view that.
It's so crazy to think that because Realmuto, like we think of him now as having a lot of mileage on him. He's like almost a decade younger than Yadi or Molina. Like it's not like he's like contemporary of them, and yet here we are.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think the Cardinals. So when the Cardinals let Wong go, this is just kind of general like offseason market. We've seen a lot of it seems like there's hesitation to spend for sure, but the deals that have gotten signed, they're short term, but they're not like crazy low dollar amounts. So like Trevor May got $7 million. I think Adam Eaton got $8 million. Carlos Santana got 2 years, $15 million. What are you guys expecting? So for in my mind, a guy like Wong will probably get something similar to what the Cardinals declined, would be my guess. Do you think that is there going to be like a big pullback at the top of the market? Are we going to see a lot of shorter term deals in anticipation of like a CBA and a potential strike? It's hard for me to like know what to expect this offseason other than to expect the Cardinals to do like almost nothing.
No, it's funny you asked that in relation to Wong because it was them not picking up Wong's option that made me realize like I have no idea right now where this market is even at. If that, what was it, 12.5 million that for Wong? Is that what it would have been?
Yeah, it was. I think it was 12 million, and there was like 1 million to decline his option, so it was like 11 million net or something.
Okay, and yeah, so I was thinking if somehow that's too expensive for a guy who is 30 and playing his best baseball, arguably the best second baseman in the National League, then I don't even know what's going on anymore. That just and part of it is because I've been a little more withdrawn from the whole baseball world just because of everything that's going on. So I feel a little more out of it. But I've still been waiting, and maybe one of you can do this, to hear not necessarily that you believe this, but a defense of not picking up Wong's option. Like, is there a solid, like, what is out there to even say, like, well, this is why they did this. This is why they had kind of the leverage and the flexibility where they could let Wong walk, for even though it only would have cost $12 million to have him around for another year.
I mean, for me, I think you're looking at what value does he have over the next guy, and to me, it probably says two things. It says, one, they think highly of Tommy Edman still. They think that he's probably a similar player to Wong, which is, productive, above average player, kind of even in his bad years. I don't know that I believe in Edman that much, but it seems like, they at least think he's close to that. But then I also think they're just going to play, from Bill DeWitt looking at Carpenter, that it's like he has to pay him this year. He's not going to get anyone to take that money, the $18 million that Carpenter's owed. And to me, it seems like the thought is for 2021 that if you're going to get paid, you're going to play. And I think that's bad for the Cardinals. Matt Carpenter's not a productive player anymore. He hasn't been a productive player for 2 years, and there aren't really any signs that he's going to be one again. But I think they're getting ready to run him out there for 500-plus plate appearances, and I hope that they don't vest his option, basically.
Yeah, I think that the main concern I have with letting Wong walk, it's less because of Edman. While I'm also not totally sold on Tommy Edman, I can see the argument of Edman not being a dramatic drop-off from Wong. But the problem is that Edman is also your fail-safe for Matt Carpenter, like you mentioned, or for Paul DeJong, unless they bring Brad Miller back, figure out what they're going to do there. But like he's also an alternate outfield option, which is that speaks to the quality of the outfield options. But regardless, like you kind of need some sort of depth there. And I think that while getting rid of Colton Wong, I don't think is going to be the reason that the Cardinals would drop 10 wins in the standings or something like that. But I think that this does kind of, a lot of the floor that Tommy Edman provides is no longer there because you're now counting on him every day. And even if Matt Carpenter bounces back a little bit, even if Tommy Edman's able to sort of keep up what he did last year, which while it was a drop off from 2019 was still fine, then like that's okay. But considering the lack of excitement we have for the outfield, at that point you're basically looking at Paul Goldschmidt, hoping you get the good version of Paul DeJong, kind of shakiness at second and third base, and at that point I don't know what the Cardinals are.
Hope that 85 wins makes the playoffs.
Yeah, at that point you're kind of shooting for like the low to mid 80s, and maybe that's enough, and maybe you catch a few breaks here and there, and I'm perfectly okay with the Cardinals kind of shooting for being okay rather than going all in and then, being terrible for years after that. But I just don't know if they're quite to that level at this point. I think they still are a move or two away.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is like I'm a big Tommy Edman fan, but as you all said, if you believe in Tommy Edman to fill in for Wong, that means you have to believe in Matt Carpenter, ready to take 600 or whatever plate appearances at third base, and
that's a tough ask.
Yeah, it is. So I don't know. Go ahead.
And I think I'm more bullish on Matt Carpenter than you guys are. I'm probably more bullish than most people are, but you're depending on that, and you're depending on Tommy Edman to keep it up, and you're depending on Paul DeJong not to turn into a pumpkin in the second half of the season. There's just a lot of factors that you're hoping for, and like maybe they all click. I think it's certainly reasonable to expect that one of them will click, but there's a lot of risk there.
And you mentioned Edman like being an outfield option. Like when I'm looking for guys that the Cardinals might actually sign, I'm like looking for somebody who can play second, can play third, maybe can play short, and maybe can play in left or right field. And so you're just trying to replace Edman with another probably older Edman, or so like Jurickson Profar, John LaRue talked about like a week ago. Jurickson Profar is a good fit because he can, he plays a decent second, he plays a decent third, he can stand it short, and he has some experience in the outfield. And so it's kind of funny that by moving Wong, they just found themselves ending kind of needing to replace Edman, and you just kind of moved the target a little bit. And maybe they can find somebody to replace Edman a little cheaper. I don't know. But like you said, they're not going to be a better team for it, which I think is the frustrating part. Like, they've been good. They've been kind of on the verge. The division's not really doing anything. The Reds just traded away their best reliever. The division's there for the taking if they want to take it, and it seems like nobody wants to. The Cubs, I think, non-tenured Schwarber, they don't want it either. It's just kind of a sad state, I think, in the NL Central, unfortunately.
The Pirates are 1 or 2 moves away. They're right there.
Yeah, that's what's the streak at, Alex? How the Pirates have finished below the Cardinals in the standings for how many years?
The Pirates have finished below the Cardinals every year since 1999 in the standings. It's the longest, meaning it started in the year 2000. It's the longest such streak in baseball. And I believe it's the longest streak ever of this kind of thing was like the Yankees over like the Philadelphia Athletics for like 40 years or something.
I think it might have been over the Browns.
What's that?
I think it might have been over the Browns, actually.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, that would
I'm not
certainly
positive,
that would certainly make a lot of sense as well. Although the Browns went to the series like in the 40s. So,
44, yeah.
Yeah, so that may have interrupted that. I remember they answered this one time on Effectively Wild. It could have been the Browns. But yeah, so Cardinals have finished ahead of the Pirates every year since starting in the year 2000. And I was actually looking at this the other day. The Pirates, they finally, I think in 2013, broke that streak where they actually finished above 500 for the first time in 20 years.
Yeah.
But they haven't won a division since we have gone to the wild card format.
Well, the worst, the like most Pirates thing to happen is the year they won 97, the Cubs won 98, and the Cardinals won 100.
No, it was.
I think it was flipped.
It was the opposite. Yeah,
Pirates at 98.
Yeah, Cubs won 97 and Pirates.
I liked it better in my head than I should have kept it there.
Just adds to the tragedy of it.
Yeah. So moving on a little from baseball, I know there's a big basketball game coming up this weekend. It's going to be very hard to watch. It is on Illinois and Missouri are playing the annual bragging rights game.
You mean literally hard to watch?
It's going to be it's airing on SEC alternate network or something like that. I know I don't get normal SEC network, so I know I won't get SEC alternate. I'm going to find a way to stream it somewhere, I hope. Unfortunately, probably for Alex, because then he'll have to deal. Not only will he not be able to watch the game, but he will still have to go look at his Twitter and see me angry about a team ranked in the top 10 with multiple probable future NBA players.
I think I've said before to you that I don't know if people see our rapport on there, and like I am kidding when I tell you to basically shut the fuck up when you're talking about Illinois. But I do appreciate the fact that you're very smart. You're super smart, but you're not above like when like the best player in Illinois misses a free throw, like calling him a piece of crap and that like his draft stock just dropped 20 or like 20 spots or something.
They've had 25 years of disappointing me. I don't know anything else.
I admire that. 'Cause I think we've arrived at a point where every fan is trying to be, and for good reason, like, but every fan is trying to be too like non-hot takey, and that's good, obviously. But every once in a while, like you just kind of have to let it fly. So I in spite of how mad I appear to be online about your awful takes with Illinois basketball, I appreciate it on some level.
You're clearly laughing about this. This is all very funny to you.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I feel like the Cardinals, I've kind of like figured out that baseball is just a big collection of whatever anyway. So like it's 160 some games. I can't get too upset about it. I haven't figured that out with college basketball yet, because I feel like every like bad loss is going to matter at the end of the year. Every good win is going to matter at the end of the year. And for 2 hours, I think the biggest thing is I spend 2 hours like actively watching this, whereas baseball is just kind of on for me. Usually it's just like background noise, but I get to the end of a game like against Ohio, and it's like I just spent 2 hours watching them almost lose to Ohio. Like, what the hell? Missouri similarly had to sweat one out the other day. John, I don't know if you got to watch that. I think it was last night, maybe against Liberty.
Yeah, last night they had a comeback against Liberty. I'm currently in kind of a flux cable situation, and also I can't go to a bar because the world is shut down. So I actually have not seen a second of Mizzou basketball this year, though I just did get cable for my new house today, so I might be able to watch the game on Saturday. We'll see. I expect that Illinois will probably win the game, but really, the thing about being a Mizzou fan is that I don't have any expectation that they'll ever like win a national championship in basketball or football. But if they can just like make the tournament, that's cool. If the football team can go 8-4 every year, that's cool. That's all I'm really asking for. I'm not that demanding, but I haven't even gotten that lately. So,
I think that's why I really love this game every year. Partly because I never really knew many Mizzou fans, so I had no reason to dislike them. Because the easiest way for me to dislike a team is to actually meet some of their fans usually, and I didn't know any really. So Mizzou, and I felt like they similar common bonds to the Cardinals and stuff. I don't think John would be offended if I said Illinois is probably historically a slightly better program.
oh yeah, definitely.
but they're very similar programs still in that like. Mizzou's, I guess, biggest rival back in the Big 12 days was Kansas, I assume. But I don't know if Kansas felt that way about Mizzou. Maybe they did. They probably did, actually. But Illinois was kind of always like, we all kind of always had these roving rivals, like, I guess, Indiana. But we were never Indiana's biggest rival, except maybe during the Eric Gordon debacle. So I don't know. My point is that the programs have always felt kind of similar to me in a way. Does that make sense? Like they've always been kind of on the periphery of always pretty solid. I don't know if Mizzou's ever had a great team or recently a great team like Illinois has had, but they've always been at least solid. The last few years notwithstanding. But
Mizzou did have a great regular season team. We don't need to talk about what happened. I assume the tournament was canceled in 2012. I can't really guess on that one.
That's one of those games where I remember exactly where I was watching. Right after work, went to a bar around the corner to watch Mizzou. Was it Norfolk State?
No.
Is that
freaking Kyle O'Quinn is still around playing professional basketball? Well, because that was the same day that Duke lost to Lehigh with C.J. McCollum. So, like,
right.
So two 15s beat twos, but in both situations, the 15 had like the best NBA player on the court. So.
Was that the year that Louisville lost? Louisville was a top 3 or 4 seed and lost in the first round too.
I think so.
I remember there was one year I was in high school, so 2012 would have fit that. I was like watching the games during class on my phone, and it was within like the first 4 hours of the tournament starting, all of my Final Four teams were out. Everyone. It was the worst pick. It was the worst picking ever, ever.
Well, I was about to ask if that was the same year Georgetown lost to Florida, but
Gulf
that
Coast.
Couldn't have been because there's no
that
way
was
that would have
2013.
been. Okay, yeah, there couldn't have been 3 number 2 seeds lose in the same year. But okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it was. I just remember I was sitting. I think it was in like a world history. No, not world. You probably. Geography. It was geography. I was going to say history, but it was geography. I was sitting in geography class and watching on my phone because who needs to learn geography? And yeah, it was a nightmare scenario. I just watched them fall. It was horrible. And then since then, all my picks are always bad. Whatever I pick the opposite, and you'll be fine. That was where it all fell apart for me.
John, I have a question. You probably, if you pay a little bit of attention here, Illini fans talk all the time either about 89 or the 05 team. Who's the Mizzou team that the fan base absolutely loves?
As far as people that are like my generation, probably just the 12 team, which is unfortunate because the lack of tournament success. The 09 team was quite good as well. They were a 3 seed, I think they were, and they made the Elite 8, and they lost to UConn to get to the Final Four. They've had a couple decent teams. The last time they were a number 1 seed was 94, which is I was alive, but it's a little bit before my paying attention time.
Was that Anthony Peeler or who's been on 94?
I think Peeler was around. I'm
Okay.
not great with any Mizzou history before my paying attention, unfortunately. But I think the closest thing that St. Louis area Mizzou fans had to some sort of like championship bandwagon. So I knew a lot of people for the 04-05 who were on the Illini bandwagon because that team was just incredibly fun to watch. And like I never had like the hate for like Illinois that I did with Kansas, because I was always rooting against Kansas in every possible context, no matter what. But watching Darren Williams and D Brown and Luther Head was just a lot of fun. So I have to tip my cap there.
Yeah, that was fun. And when we were blowing out, I forget who we even played in the first game this year, and we were like blowing them out. And I tweeted something like, "This might be the best Illinois team since 05." And then later I was thinking like, well, it's not like there's been a ton of awesome Illinois teams since 05. So I don't know how bold of a statement that actually was. So yeah, I also miss Luther Head and Darren Williams and D Brown.
They've creeped up to 20 wins a couple times that I can remember, but it's been a little slow over the last 15 years. It's probably because I watched them. So the like when they were good, I wouldn't be able to watch the game even in 04-05. They always did better when I wasn't watching. So that comeback in March against Arizona, I was literally hiding in a closet when they went down 15 because I knew I was the problem. And then they came back. I was not watching the game the entire time. I didn't watch overtime. I never saw that comeback until I was like in college, like 21, 22 years old. It was the first time I like allowed myself to watch the only like good Illinois thing to ever happen in my lifetime. So we'll start, I guess before we wrap up, I want to get each of your guys' picks for the game this weekend. I'll start. Last year, I thought Illinois was good. They lost to Missouri. I found out while I was standing on top of a mountain skiing. I tried not to let it ruin the rest of that day. It sort of did anyways. Despite how negative I'm going to be during the game and leading up to the game, I will take Illinois. It's going to be close. It's always close. Missouri's actually, I think, pretty good this year. They have, I think, like 4 former Illinois recruits: Mark Smith, Tillman, Pickett, and I feel like there's one more. But I will take Illinois in a close one. I hope it gets chippy because chippy is always interesting.
I love it when it gets chippy. I think there was a little chippiness last year. Tillman and someone got into it, and I thought it was wonderful. I want to say Illinois, of course. Tillman, if I recall, really got the best of Kofi last year, and
I don't think Kofi's gotten better.
That's what I was about to say. His hands just worry me a little bit. But I think we have the best player on the court in Ayo. I'm going to say Illinois, but I'm not that confident in the pick, and I will say Illinois by 5. 75-70, which was actually the final score of the North Carolina championship game. So fuck that. I'm not saying that score. 74-69.
Nice.
Got to throw in a 69 for the sake of the internet, I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
Why am I cursing so much? I don't curse.
It's that one beer that you've had.
Well, I'm going to dispute Zach's earlier notion, having watched a lot of mid-aughts bragging rights games, that the games are always close, because they are not always close. But last couple have been pretty good. I actually have attended the previous 2. I will not be attending this year's, but I would say that it's hard for me to pick Mizzou, even though I think they certainly have a chance to win, because I think the 2 teams are relatively even. But I'm still going to go with my head rather than my heart. I'll say Illinois wins probably by about 4 or 5, like Alex said. I feel like it's going to be a relatively sort of optimistic game at the end, because as much as Mizzou fans like winning that game, we still would rather just have a good season rather than have a good night in December. So if the game ends being relatively well played, Illinois just outplays Mizzou, we can kind of hold our heads up and feel like this is still a tournament team.
Yeah, and P-Funk, just pick Mizzou, John.
I will not be bullied.
Yeah, I think I see a lot of Mizzou just from not liking Missouri and following it out of kind of an anti-fan perspective. But you guys beat Oregon. season's gotten off to a good start. It's not one of those years where neither team had, or one of the teams doesn't really have anything to play for other than the rivalry games, which has been the case a few times in my recent memory. So should be a good game. Won't be the end of the season for either of them, but it will probably appear that way if you're scrolling.
Seems like a real knock on wood moment for 2020 to say that the season won't end with
it actually. Mike Krzyzewski wants it to end now after Illinois.
We ended Duke, Zach.
Yeah, we broke
Illinois
Coach K.
Yeah.
We broke Coach K. So he went from saying the NCAA had to have the tournament, couldn't go 2 years without it, to questioning whether they should play or not, which is fair. I don't want to make too much light of that, but
I hope you guys are okay with the fact that you made North Carolina fans happy by beating Duke.
That's a weird triangle of whenever they play, trying to figure out how do I even because I think a normal person says like, well, I'm never cheering for Duke, but I have such bad feelings about North Carolina now that that's just a really bad game for me.
Yeah, it's hard to. I don't even. When I watch that game, I just hope it's close and that bad things happen. And whoever wins kind of by accident, basically. Which kind of happened last year. They had a couple.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the one game last year. I remember that.
It's like that kind of. It was a strange ending. North Carolina had a terrible season, almost beat Duke, and somehow managed to choke it away twice, I think. But we'll see how it goes. Looking forward to it. You're probably going to have to illegally stream it if you're going to watch it, unless you pay for the fourth tier of whatever cable package you have. So good luck to everyone trying to actually watch the basketball game. We will be back. So the Nerds on the Black is we're kicking it back up with the offseason. I'm hoping that we could keep this going, and definitely looking forward to hopefully in the future having you guys both back at some point. And hopefully soon we get some baseball news to talk about. Mosaic said that January is the new December, though, so I am not holding my breath. But hopefully we see something soon. So thanks, both of you. We'll kick it over to Kyle Reese of Birds on the Black. He's going to be starting pad if he hasn't already gotten it going. That should be fun. Should go for a while. And so we'll hopefully I'll be in the comments over there and see everybody on that side. So appreciate it, everyone.
Thanks, man.